Hi guys, how you doing? Good to see you all. Firstly, I've got myself a bit of a filming issue now because I used to be able to set up my little tripod in the car here. I could sit and chat away, but I've actually just changed cars in the last couple of weeks. I don't know if probably some of you might remember that tree that fell through my car 2 years ago. I got a sort of makeshift car in the meantime while I needed to get around, and I've had it for 2 years now, and I've just managed to get a new company car, and it's pretty much identical to the one that the tree fell through 2 years ago. So I think I've still got a bit of PTSD from that. Every time the wind blows, I'm up during the night pacing up and down the house, worried that I'm going to see or hear what I did that horrible day. But anyway, I've got the exact same car, same colour, so it feels like I've got unfinished business with that car. So anyway, enough about that, but I'm sitting in the car right now. I don't have anywhere to rest my tripod, so I'm a little bit shaky today, but bear with me. Anyway, enough about cars and me and whatnot. Been up at the training ground this morning, speaking to Eddie Howe ahead of tomorrow's huge match against Manchester City. Feels like the season is just hanging on it now. Eddie was keen to say that's not the case because there's still a lot to play for in the league. The aim is to squeeze into Europe and they want to finish the season on a high, and he refuted the comments by Jamie Carragher the other night, who said that it looked as though Newcastle were a team just waiting for the end of the season. Now, I have to say, watching the game on Monday, I felt almost those same words coming out of my own mouth as well. I think I texted that to a couple of mates. That's what it kind of looked like to me. So I can see where Jamie Carragher came from. Newcastle looked tired. They look like they need a fresh start. The players look like they need some rest, and I can see why he said it, but also I can see why Eddie Howe is arguing against that, because, you know, with what, 9, 10, 11 games to go, whatever it is, why would you ever write off a season when you've got, you know, players earning lots of money like that, big name players who will want to show what they can do and give themselves something to look forward to, and you guys as fans is something to look forward to in Europe next season. But the main point of today's press conference, really, and the main, I think, lines that came out of it and the interesting topics were all about Eddie's team selection. And look, it's pretty clear what many of you think. Just speaking to my Newcastle supporting mates, everyone fairly critical of the performances of Sean Longstaff, Dan Burns, Sven Botman to an extent of late, and also critical of Eddie Howe and his selection of them, his continued selection of them, despite the fact that none of them haven't been playing well for some amount of time. So that was kind of the main topic of today's press conference. And, you know, Eddie, as you would expect, displayed an impassioned defence of his players. He said Sean Longstaff's been playing with an injury since the game against Everton last season. So, I mean, what that's going on a year now if he's been playing with this foot injury. Now, obviously, one would question why that hasn't been operated on, or he's been given the time to rest. Eddie Howe says he's not had time to rest because they've had so few players to choose from. Whenever he's been available, he's had to select him, and he's had to say, look, are you going to do a job for us? And he said, look, I'll never criticise a player like Sean, who he said and many times has gone out this season and played for the club rather than for himself. And he said, look, I know how important he is to the team. His intelligence, his game intelligence, his understanding of what we ask him to do is of the highest level. And that is why I'll continue to pick him. Now, he was asked, why have you not rested him? And he said, I've not got the players to do it. I've just not been able to do that at any stage, and I've had to play him. He said, look, I'm trying to protect a 17-year-old in the shape of Lewis Miley. Don't want him to play too much. And I have to say, for weeks it was looking like Miley was getting tired and he did need to be taken out. Like, I know I've seen some comments to my tweet from fans saying, you know, Paris Saint-Germain, I've got young Zaire Emery who's 17 and plays every week. I think it's a different situation to Miley. Exploded onto the scene. He's kind of been ahead of schedule with his performances and displays, and I thought he was probably looking more tired than Sean Longstaff was a couple of weeks ago. So I understand why he's doing that with Lewis Miley, and I do understand why he said that. You have to understand, Elliot Anderson has not been available, neither has Sandro Tonali, and neither, obviously, latterly has been Joe Linton. So Look, I think he's been pretty much scraping around for midfielders, and I think when you've got someone like Sean Longstaff, who you know what they're going to put into every game, whether they're not up to pace with that game, whether they're not playing as well as what they have done previously, I think he knows that he can trust them in terms of his output in a game, and I think that is why he has been playing every week, and that is why I think he'll play again tomorrow against Manchester City. And I mean, you do have to question certain things, like against Chelsea on Monday night. I know the game was largely gone, but both Joe Willock and Bruno Guimaraes were off before him. Now, Willock obviously is coming back from injury himself and he's trying to protect him. I get that. Bruno, of course, is one booking away from a ban. How he's hung on to that for so long, I don't know. And perhaps he just thought, look, the game's pretty much gone now. Let's save Bruno for games that we probably can win, because it was looking like Newcastle couldn't win it by that stage. So I kind of get that. And I have to say, watching the game the other night, Bruno looked knackered as well. He looked shattered towards the end. So look, I think it's a difficult one, and Sean Longstaff is always going to want to play. Being a Newcastle fan, he'll always say that he's fit, and Eddie Howe said that. Look, he always wants to go out and give his all to the team, but it's a difficult situation. I always find with these ones, the truth lies in the middle somewhere, and you know, there are probably been opportunities where Eddie could have left him out. You know, there's probably been a sprinkling of those, but also there has to be an understanding that the injury situation this season has just been on a different level, and it almost feels like as soon as you get one back in the shape of Willock, out goes Joe Linton, you know, and it's, you know, it feels like of the 6 midfielders they've only ever had 3 at any stage. You know, they've only ever had 3, and perhaps a 4th who's maybe just coming back from injury or is playing through an injury himself. But the news he said today was Longstaff had an injection to play last week against Chelsea. He only trained 1 or 2 games. He said he can't get up to full speed because he's not training properly. So it sounds like he's going into matches with a player who's like 60-70% fit. And look, it's far from ideal, especially when you're going to be playing a team like Manchester City tomorrow. We know the array of talent they've got, the fitness, the work rate, etc. So look, he was very defensive of Longstaff, and you can understand why. No manager's going to come out there in a press conference and, you know, slaughter a player or criticise a player, because that's just going to make matters worse. So Eddie Howe in those situations is in, like any other football manager, a very difficult situation. He did at a later stage in the press conference this morning say that the biggest tool I've got as a football manager is team selection, and if a player isn't doing it, I let them know in no uncertain terms behind the scenes, maybe not to you guys in press conferences or outwardly, but I do that behind the scenes. And the biggest tool I've got is team selection, so I can take players out of the team. Now, I hear what you're all saying. Well, why has he not done that with Sean Longstaff? Why has he not done that with Dan Burn? And look, I think that probably is a question that Eddie Howe still needs to answer through all of this. Lewis Hall has been there available. Look, we don't know what stage he's at in terms of his development. We can only go what the manager tells us, and he says that, look, he's not ready to be playing 90 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever that may be. But you know, this is a player who came through the ranks as Chelsea as a midfielder. They converted him into left wing back, and he's been played out there for Newcastle a couple of times, and look, I think he's done okay. I thought the game against Man United away, the 3-0 win, I thought he was good that night, scored a good goal, and it looked like he could kick on from then, but hasn't. So it feels as though Eddie is saying that, look, I can take players out, I can drop them when need be, but this season I've just not been able to do that. And look, I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, who would he have had to bring in? You know, I think if this had been the case and Tonali had been available or Joe Linton, then of course, yeah, these guys would have played. But he has been down to the bare bones for the majority of the season. And whatever the situation is with Lewis Hall, he obviously just feels that he can't trust them right now to put him into a big clash like this, whether it be at left back, left wing back, or central midfield. So look, there'll be a lot of you thinking and saying, why are you contradicting yourself, Eddie? Because, you know, you're saying the biggest tool I've got is team selection, but yet you're not choosing to do that. And he did follow that up by saying, look, I've not had the array of options this season that I hoped we would have had. And that is why we're in the situation we're in, where players are playing through the pain barrier, they're taking injections to play, they're playing when they're probably only 70% fit, and I think it's just kind of summed up Newcastle's season. But look, I suppose you need to take it back to last summer and the recruitment, and look, the recruitment's been good for a number of windows now, but when you think back to last summer and you think of the players that have been signed, Sandro Tonali, he had the betting scandal hanging over him, of course the club didn't know of, they would never have signed him, but you know, that's your marquee signing of the summer, has hardly kicked a ball. Harvey Barnes, your second biggest signing, what was he, 35 million pounds? He's played, I mean, you would have got more out of Alan St-Maximin this season than him, but nobody knew he would have had these injuries. But look, it has been a failure in terms of a signing so far. He's hardly kicked a ball. And then your two young players who are meant to be broken into the team a bit more gently in the shape of Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall. Livramento's been good, but he's trying to usurp one of your best players and one of your, you know, your vice captain, your on-field captain, and you know, in the absence of Jamal Lascelles and Lewis Hall, who's we know it's been a failure because he's not played so far. And yes, as Eddie Howe said last week, he's one for the future. But I think what Newcastle needed last summer was they needed players for now, the here and now. They didn't need players for 2, 3, 4 years down the line. They needed to strengthen that first team pool, that 11, and also the players that come off the subs bench for the Champions League assault. And I think if they'd done that a bit better, they would have gone through in the Champions League, and I think that was what really held them back, a combination of the injuries and the poor recruitment. And look, I think it can only be underlined by, I was watching West Ham last night against Freiburg in the Europa League, and you know, they've knocked 5 past them, and Mohamed Kudus scoring 2, one of them a goal of the season contender, and you're looking at him, and he was a player who was mentioned in the summer, and you're thinking, you know, no disrespect to Harvey Barnes, but someone like him, Kudus, what he would have added to Newcastle. You could have played him out on that right hand side with Gordon in the left and Isak or Wilson through the middle, and what a different looking starting 11 that would be. You could then have Miguel Almiron to come on as an impact substitute for his energy and his running power. And you know, you look at things like that and you're thinking, maybe rather than just going down the British route in the shape of Hall, Livramento, Barnes, they could have looked to someone like Kudus, who, as I say, I remember talking about him last summer. Edson Alvarez, the West Ham midfielder, another one that, you know, was taken, and I remember being mentioned in dispatches with Newcastle as well. And you know, although the injuries have been a real blow to the season, I do feel the recruitment last summer has caused a lot of this, and the fact that the 4 players who were signed, we've only actually seen one of them in the shape of Livramento actually do anything positive, and even then he's the second choice right back. So the starting 11 has not been improved at all, and you know, nobody knew about Sandro Tonali. These were mistakes, but I think these were unlucky when you look at it. But when you look at the window as a whole, it was a failure, and that's what's caused a lot of the situation that Newcastle find themselves in right now. So they have to make sure this transfer window coming up will be better, and they make the right decisions, and they bring the right players into the club, because you know, sometimes you maybe need to look outside the box a little bit. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be saying this if Harvey Barnes had scored 20 goals, and after that first game against Aston Villa on the opening day of the season, it looked like he was probably going to go and do that. So look, hindsight is a wonderful thing, but yeah, I just think that has been a big issue throughout the season, and I think that's why we're sitting here right now and saying, you know, why is Sean Longstaff getting forced to play, and why is Dan Burn getting forced to play? Perhaps they should have brought in a left back. I mean, I was all up for someone like Kieran Tierney with my Scottish roots coming in. Someone like him, and I know he's had his injuries himself, but someone who was ready and prepared to come straight into the starting 11, unlike a Lewis Hall. But anyway, there we go. They have to just go with that until the end of the season, and looking forward to going down to Manchester City tomorrow. And I don't know whether you guys will be or not, but you know, I'm sure you'll take your support. 8,000 fans going down there, and Eddie was at pains to thank the support. He said they've been absolutely outstanding this season. He was all unaware of the heavy criticism from the Chelsea game, but he said, look, I understand it, I'm not surprised by it. We were angry as well. The players were angry, and he said, look, if the fans are saying these things that they are on social media, and they're as angry as they are, he goes, that's fine. Our job is to go down there, try and get a result, and try and make sure that they almost eat their words, so to say. So let's see what happens tomorrow, guys. But obviously good news, Anthony Gordon looks like he'll be available. He trained yesterday partly, and is expected to train today. Newcastle are training this afternoon before heading down to Manchester City tonight, the night before the game. They normally head down on the day of the game, but I think they've decided to head down the night before, just to give them that little bit prep down there, rather than travelling down on the day of the game, when maybe they feel the legs might be a little bit tired with the travel. So anyway, guys, that's it from me. Hope that brings you a few of the points from Eddie's press conference today, when I have to say he was quite outspoken, and he was quite staunch in his defence of his players, while also admitting that he does have decisions to make, and if players aren't performing, he will take them out of the team. So let's see what happens. Okay guys, leave your comments below, give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done already, and I'll see you at the weekend. Cheers now.